Hello everyone. This is the third video in the JavaScript playlist for JavaScript fundamentals. So in this video, we'll be saying how we can actually see the execution stack live in the Chrome DevTools. So if you haven't checked the previous two videos, I would highly recommend you go and check out those two videos because that would be helpful for you to understand this video better. Uh, but anyways, I will get started. So in the previous video, I explained what is an execution stack. Now in this video, we are going to see it live using the Chrome DevTools. So I have written a brief piece of code here. So let's see the code right from line number 19. So at line number 19, I am logging a string called global. Then I'm calling out a function called standalone, and the standalone function does nothing but it just prints standalone statement, and after that I call another function, that is outer. So this outer function prints outer, but after that the function isn't finished. It calls another function called inner. Inner prints inner, but again the function is not finished. It calls another function called innermost, and the innermost function just prints innermost and is finished. So I'm able to load this code in my browser, and you go to Chrome DevTools. If you don't know about Chrome DevTools, I would recommend you Google and learn about it. It's a very important tool for you if you are doing any kind of front-end development. And on the third tab, you would see something called as sources. So in the sources, I would be able to see my entire JavaScript code. So my entire JavaScript code written in index.js, I'm able to see it here. You might not be able to see it in live websites as it is, because there the code would be bundled and minified, but here we haven't minified any code. The code is as it is. And also one more thing, here we have applied breakpoints. So breakpoints are kind of an interrupters where I can manually pause the code anywhere. So my first breakpoint is at the global log, my another breakpoint. After that, I call standalone. So my another breakpoint would be in standalone function. Then it would be in the outer function. Then it would be in the inner function. Then it would be in the innermost function. Now, before seeing it exactly in the Chrome Dev tool, let's just kind of do a brief theory how this code might be running in terms of the execution stack. So if I see line number 19, so initially I would get my global execution stack, that is by default. So my first entry in the execution stack would be global. After that, there will be another entry in my global execution stack, and that would be standalone. Now, standalone, once it enters, the function finishes off, and that's where standalone would be thrown out of the stack. So that's it. So there is no standalone here. Now, the third entry would be outer. So it would be third entry, but in stack it would be second because standalone would be already thrown out. Now we have outer. Now what happens in outer? Outer prints console.log outer, fine. But the function doesn't get finished because there is another function that has been called inner. So there is one more entry in the stack, and the outer function, outer entry in the stack is not exited yet because there is another entry inner. So it will wait for inner to get completed. Now, if we see inner line number 11, it prints inner, but still the function is not finished, and there is another entry in the stack called innermost. So now inner also won't be exited from the stack. It also has to wait for innermost to get completed before it can be exited from the stack. Now what happens in innermost? Line number 16, innermost is done. So that means innermost can be now exited from the stack. So innermost goes away. Once innermost goes away, that means inner function is also now completed. Inner function has nothing to do more. So even inner function will be exited from the stack. Once inner function is exited from the stack, only then the outer function will be exited from the stack. Once the outer function is also exited from the stack, there is nothing else to do in the entire code. So that means the global entry in the execution stack can also be exited. That means the entire call stack, we don't need it anymore. So this is the visualization that we did kind of theoretically, but we will see it now live in the Chrome DevTools. So I have maximized my screen. Let me expand it here. So as I said, this is the sources. These are the breakpoints. And if you expand this tab here, I will see something called as call stack. So now let me just refresh my code. And my first breakpoint is line number 19. That's from where my code gets started to execute. And if you see on my call stack, I have an anonymous entry. This is the global execution stack that would be by default. It would be for there. Now I can start moving to my next breakpoint using this resume script button. Now I move to my standalone function. So what happens in my call stack? After anonymous, there is one more entry called standalone. Okay. So I now move ahead. Now what is expected to happen? So standalone function gets completed. That means it will be thrown out of the stack. The same thing happens here. The standalone function is exited from the stack, but there is another entry called outer now. Now what we discussed in our theoretical visualization, the outer function is not finished yet, and the inner function has already been called in the outer function. That means there is one more entry into the stack. So what happens here? Here we have one more entry into the stack. So we have global entry, outer entry, inner entry. And this happens at line number 11. Now what is expected to happen here? So inner calls innermost. That means inner function is also not completed and it will still be there in the stack, and innermost function will be also another entry into the stack. And that is what happens here. You see innermost. So we have global entry into the stack, outer entry into the stack, inner entry into the stack, and innermost entry into the stack. Now, once I click the resume script again here, what happens? Innermost function is completed. That means innermost goes out of the stack. Inner function is also completed. That means inner goes also out of the stack. Outer function is also executed. That means outer also goes out of the stack. And after that, there is nothing else to do in the program. And that means the global execution, the global entry in the stack will also be exited from the stack. So let's try and do it again. See, there is nothing left in the call stack now.